It's all right, I can get up and speak. It's fine.
We are.
Clerk, can we do the roll call? Present, here.
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 Okay, we're going to have, this is going to be the subcommittee for the group homes and the shelter throughout the city, and I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We have City Manager Bernie Lynch is here, Adam Backey from the Planning Department, Dave Fenton, Chief Kenny LaValle, Andy Sheehan from the Manager's Office, and we also got a call from the mayor. He couldn't make it. He had a previous engagement, so he couldn't make it here tonight. We'll start off with a report from the police chief. Do you mind speaking on this, Ken? We just got a report from you, and maybe you can elaborate what we have here.
Okay. Basically, Counselor, I've supplied you with a report for basically CAD calls to the locations that you requested in the city of Lowell. We have several different programs, and I attached to this report what I hope would be an explanation for what each program does, although on some of them it was difficult to find. The first location is the Grip Home. They have two locations in the city of Lowell, one at 319 Wilder Street for young ladies, and the other one is at 35 Bonham Avenue for young men. And basically, it indicates that for the years 2006, 2007, and into 2008, from January 1 to February 5th, there were a total of 36 calls, police calls, to the Grip location on Wilder Street. For the Grip location on Bonham Avenue, 35 Bonham Avenue, there were 106 calls for police service. Then we'll get into the Lowell Transitional Living Center, which is located at 189 Middlesex Street in Lowell. In 2006, there were 257 police calls at that location. In 2007, there were 392. And so far this year, we're at 82 police calls at the Lowell Transitional Living Center at 189 Middlesex Street, for a total of 731 police calls at that location. It's important to note that the Transitional Living Center has generated more calls for service over the 2-year period than the other 6 locations combined. Many of these calls were for unwanted persons on the premises, and there were other calls as well for assaults and fights, damage and vandalism, disturbances, domestic violence, drug activity, larcenies, medical calls or well-being checks, missing persons, motor vehicle incidents, and then robberies, suspicious activity, unwanted persons, and warrants. People were arrested on warrants. And the other category would include things like miscellaneous calls like 911 hang-ups, misdials, nuisance calls, or police information. That actually was the majority of the calls at that location. The next location is the Northeast Passage, which is located at 258 Varnum Avenue. I found out after checking on the website, the Northeast Passage appears to be a program that is operating in the city of Lowell as a group home, working with boys between the ages of 13 and 17 who are referred through DSS and have emotional and/or behavioral problems. At the Northeast Passage on Varnum Avenue, there were 58 calls for service in 2006, 34 in 2007, and 6 so far this year, for a total of 98. Then we looked at the Pathfinders Safe Haven program at 94 Rock Street. That appears to be, based on my research, a program for residential and outreach services for single adults. At that location, there were 98 calls in 2006. It dropped to 53 in 2007, and so far 3 this year, for a total of 154. Then we have the Riverside School. The Riverside School is a program in Lowell that basically provides residential and educational services to young males with significant emotional and behavioral problems, including histories of abuse and neglect. They have 2 locations in Lowell, 475 Varnum Avenue and 34 Berry Road. At the 475 Varnum Avenue location in 2006, there were 25 calls for service for the police, 31 in 2007, and 7 so far this year, for a total of 63. And at the 34 Berry Road location, 18 in 2006, 11 in 2007, and 2 so far this year, for a total of 31. So in 2006, when you consider all these locations, there were 506 calls for police service at all these locations. In 2007, there were 612. So far this year, there's been 101, for a total of, in the last 2 years and a couple of months of this year, 1,219 calls for police service at these various locations throughout the city.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Well, this is stemmed from about 4 weeks ago. I came out with a motion to, at the council floor, to check on the group homes that we had some numerous complaints from the neighborhood groups and also different individuals that I have phone calls about, and just going by the shelter and seeing the individual problems we have over there. And this is the reason why we're having this subcommittee. And the Chief, I talked to you about 2 weeks ago. We had a meeting at the Mercy Center.
Right?
Yeah, and some of the problems, you stated that we had bunch of robberies downtown, and it stemmed from one of the halfway houses, that there was an individual that came from Boston, and
Yeah,
once he,
gentleman I'm talking about, Mr. McKinney, was indeed a resident at a halfway house that's not part of this group of locations or programs that I've just referred to. He was actually staying at a halfway house, I believe in Lower Belvedere, and he indeed did commit several, not robberies, but burglaries. Basically, the difference is a robbery is when someone points a gun at you or takes money from your person, as opposed to a burglary when someone breaks into your business or your home. And he committed some burglaries in downtown Lowell, about 25, during the course of his stay in Lowell, as a result of apparently his proclivity towards heroin. And he eventually was indeed arrested by the Lowell Police Department, has pled guilty, and now is in prison for those crimes. But he is just an example of someone who might be in a halfway house and program, but he is one individual, and the reason why I pointed him out is not so much due to the fact that he was living in a halfway house, but because he was responsible for numerous or multiple crimes in downtown. So when we were looking at statistics and looking at the number of burglaries that occurred in downtown Lowell, particularly in these businesses and in these professional offices, it was evident to me that he was responsible for most of the burglaries that occurred in downtown Lowell in 2007, and was very significant. We noted that after his arrest had taken place, we saw the number of burglaries drop to basically nothing, similar to the situation we're dealing with now with these armed robberies. since Mr. Jimenez's arrest last week for the robbery at the bank on Bridge Street, there have been no robberies in the city in a week. So,
Okay, I was at the Pawtuckaville Neighborhood Group on Monday and talking to Captain Flaherty. Same situation, either Grip Home or one of the group homes there, they're bringing individuals from out of town, and he's having some issues in that area with, once they release these individuals, they're comfortable in the area, so they end up staying there, and they causing problems with either break-ins or robberies, whatever the case may be. So he brought it up to me also.
right. Well, we know that, as I mentioned, we've had multiple calls to that location on Varnum Avenue, 106 in the last couple of years, and I'm sure that there have been other calls to the vicinity around the Grip home, not just at that location, but in the neighborhood as a result of issues that were caused by the people who were living at that location.
Are there any type of license or certification that these group homes need? Does anybody know, the commissioner, do they require any type of,
This is Bob.
this is Bob Camacho, the commissioner of,
Actually, they do.
Building
The
department.
the state, in addition to whatever the state requires, they ask us to go in and do a 106 state inspections, which is just a safety inspection for lights, emergency lighting, and exit signs, that type of thing. That's about the extent of our involvement with these particular homes.
so that's it. So in other words, they can come in here and just start a group home with no certification, no license?
Basically, it's the state that, it's my belief, that coordinates all
Okay.
that, and they issue the license to whoever seems to be running the operation, like the GRIP organization, those two GRIP homes, and et cetera.
Okay, Mr. Manager?
I was just going to comment. I've asked Attorney Fenton to be here because many of these group home issues have come up at the council before, and I believe Attorney Fenton has some good background information on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. The group homes, of course, really the legislation that permitted them started back in 1975, so-called Dover Amendment, which relates to our zoning statutes and which really regulates or prohibits regulation for the use or educational uses by a nonprofit organization. And the term educational uses has been very broadly interpreted by the courts to include transitional living, and the fact that people are living there doesn't change it. There's different types, different reasons why the group homes exist. Some are mental retardation situations, some are, in a sense, halfway houses, some are, in a sense, people that are just down and out. But in any event, the city cannot, and a lot of cities have tried. Lynn, for example, was probably one of the prime cases that began, and they were strictly stepped on by the courts in their attempt to, by way of enforcing parking regulations, by enforcing certain other things. Basically, they were trying to restrict them from existing. And the courts struck them down, and it was pretty strong language in the court's action. But the use of the property cannot be prohibited, cannot be, in a sense, regulated by any city or town with respect to this type of educational uses, or as we commonly call them, group homes. There is a provision which says, yes, you can exercise and impose and enforce reasonable regulations with respect to size, setback, parking, and so forth. But you can't exercise that in such a way that you prohibit the use. It has to be somewhat of a reasonable exercise of those restrictions. There are, innumerable cases, and they all come down to the same decision. I will say that way back when there used to be Department of Public Health regulations which said that they would consider the locale, the neighborhood in which they were going in terms of the numbers of these homes, but they took that out. They took it out. So now Nothing says they can't be side by side, for example. And it's in any zoning district, and the zoning ordinances that we would enact could not circumvent that statute. So, in a sense, we have to live with it, and I think we have to live with it. Perhaps the best way is, from what the DPD said, by monitoring the managing and the control of the house and working with the people in charge so that some of the problems that Superintendent LaValle enumerates are addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Fenton,
Yes.
we can't do it through zoning, can't interfere or prohibit or restrict. What about enforcement of safety violations and things? I'm assuming the intent of getting this report is to find out how many calls, is there a safety issue or hazard here in neighborhoods? And that's what people's real concern, I think, is not so much that they're there, but that they may be posing a threat to the surrounding neighbors. Is there anything that can be affected in terms of public safety or enforcement?
Well, again, you come back to the use. The use of the home can be, we can't prohibit it, we can't restrict it. You can arrest somebody that's violating the law. Nothing says that you can't.
So basically, it's like a regular home. If someone comes to my house, police come, they arrest you, but they can't,
They can't prevent
put a
you
red
from
X
living
on the
there.
house. Okay. So basically, all we can do is enforce the laws in and around it, and work with whoever's there to try and make it coexist in a better way.
Right, I think as the Division of Planning and Development said, communication and, monitoring the management that runs the place is probably the best way. But you get into a peck of trouble, the citywide, by in turn trying to use zoning or use regulations to push them out of town, as it won't work.
Okay, that's what I thought. Now, lastly, is it's also my understanding that we can't regulate or interfere with where the residents or inhabitants of those houses or homes come from, in terms of whether they come from
Whether they come from Billerica or
Massachusetts
from
or-
Chelmsford,
Yeah.
not that any come from Chelmsford, of course.
whatever town, coming in from other towns or cities.
No, you cannot. You cannot. Nothing says that you must be a resident of the city to live in one of these places or to enjoy the benefits of them, unfortunately. And the various departments that issue the license, unfortunately, congregate these in places where there's mass transportation and so forth, so that these people can in a sense, get access to these places. So, to answer your question, no, we can't restrict out-of-towners.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, just along those same lines, and I think it ties in with, Council, with another question you asked regarding the regulating them in some way. Many of these homes and the transitional living center itself operate under contracts with state agencies, state government that are effectively regulating what goes on there. They have certain requirements that they have to meet. So in many cases, I think if we have issues with the operation of potentially one of these group homes, that we could contact the funding agency, the agency that contracts for the services of perhaps a halfway house, and indicate that there are some issues there that should be brought to their attention. But along those same lines, many of these agencies are utilizing these facilities to deal with a social issue that's statewide, so they do move them from location to location. There's only, for instance, they're only going to put one of these within a particular region. It happens to be in Lowell, or it happens to be in, Chelmsford or Billerica or wherever it might be, and they will assign people to those particular locations. And halfway houses, generally, they try to move people out of the neighborhoods that they're from in order to get away from a particular problem. So in the case of the individual that Superintendent LaValle was speaking of that came out of Boston to come to this halfway house, there are probably individuals from Lowell that are in a halfway house in Boston somewhere. But the out-of-town issue is really a state regulatory issue.
It sounds like there's a reason for it, but to get back to the state regulation, the state regulating and permitting and funding in many instances these homes and institutions here, is there a formal process for the city to file a complaint with the state in terms of an operation and what's going on?
I don't think there's a formal process for that, no. But I'm not entirely sure of that, so we can certainly research that.
If we could, because it sounds like the only way we're going to be able to make, if we can't coexist and there's a real problem in a neighborhood, it looks like the recourse, our only recourse may be, if there is one, to go to the state level to say, hey, you guys are funding these people and we've had
Right.
X amount of problems, and can you do something? It may be more of an ask than a formal
Right.
charge or anything that they
Generally,
have to
we do
respond.
try to work with the management. I know that Superintendent LaValle has met with one or two of these group homes to deal with issues. I know that, in dealing with some of the issues, we've reached out to the Transitional Living Center, and they've reached out to us to try to work cooperatively on a number of the issues that are taking place there. And Dr. Bassinen and other members of the staff have worked
I appreciate
with.
you coming here tonight, Doctor.
So-
It's a great, first step in moving forward in coexistence, hopefully. And but in terms of some of the others that may not, if we could maybe look into and find out, is there some type of recourse with the state, or at least an ask to say, hey,
It would probably vary department by department. Some are social services, some are, youth services, Department of Mental Retardation. Each one would be different, but we could probably check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to give a little bit of my view. I'm only speaking for myself, but when you look at a city the size of Lowell, there's many different things. There's the arts and culture, there's the youth organizations, there's wealthy sections of the city and very poor sections. There's people that are functioning every day, doing their job, and there's people that have problems. There are people that are poor. There are people that are veterans back from the war and have been left with some sort of illness. And when we look at the makeup of the city of Lowell, it's not a cut and dried amount of people that are functioning. And when I say that, I look at the certain area that we're trying to fix up, namely the Hamilton Canal, and we want what's perfect. We want to take that area and bring it back into vibrancy. And having done that and thinking about everything we have to do, we see that there's in the middle, and lo and behold, there's a transitional center with people that probably will bring the area down, so we think. But I hear from businesses aside of it that are saying, I think we can coexist together. And I heard that from Karen Bell many times and the other businesses from Jambra. And I said, wow, this is very compassionate to say, even though we're up and coming in that neighborhood, we still want to keep them there. But the message that we're trying to say is that over time it's a little bit frustrating, and we see that in order to coexist and make things happen for the good of our city, we need to be a little bit stricter with those agencies and say, what Councilor Broderick was saying, where do we turn with this? We can send the police over there 400 and something times, which I know there's medical problems. We got to remember that one time we had many agencies like Solomon Mental Health and Danvers and state hospitals, certain portions of Tewksbury Hospital that took people in that had mental illness, and the state, which not in their wisdom, but I remember Councilor Caulfield, Councilor Richard Howe, and myself going down to Boston to the Department of Mental Health pleading and begging to not close these facilities. So what did they do? They closed them anyways and put these people out in the street. And I, for one, don't want to find out that there's going to be a snowstorm, but people are reverting back to sleeping under bridges. We don't want that in the city. I don't think any one of my colleagues do. But we are frustrated to some degree that we're asking those agencies, like the people in Pawtucketville that have to live near the grip home, to reinforce your laws. It's good enough that we open up the facility to you, try to comply with our needs and our rules, that there are people that really need a job, that are down and out in their luck. We need these places to be the gap between them dying and trying to get their life back together. I want to tell you that I went out to eat last night in this particular restaurant. I won't say where it was. And the waitress was a young girl, and she was very bubbly, and I liked her. I really liked her. And we got to talking to her, and I said, now, where do you live? Do you live in Lowell or wherever? And she opened up and told me her life story, like I probably didn't want to hear that much, but she came from the GRIP project, the GRIP program. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of controversy with that, but believe it or not, they helped her and got her out into society and a job. They saved her life, I believe, and I want to hear that these agencies are useful and they save people's lives. And you're not going to hear that all the time. There's a certain segment of our population that you just can't save. You cannot save them no matter what. They have to want to be saved. But I hear the compassion with trying to let everybody fit into this society, let everybody fit into this city. We just need to reinforce all these agencies and try to make that happen, because we're frustrated. We don't want to blame anybody, but we want to know that, you know, these organizations, whether it be the Transitional Living Center or the GRIP program or whatever it is, they have to fill out forms and justify their existence. They must have to be accountable to be prosperous in the city by being good neighbors. You know what I mean? Good neighbors. I know that I work for the Sheriff's Department and we're right next door to a church. We have to be good neighbors for our area as well, and we try to do that. So I think that's why we're all sitting here together. If anybody has any suggestions on how we can make all this work together and make everybody live as good neighbors. It's not easy, the jobs that you have in Dr. Wayne. I know that it's tough. I know that in the Transitional Living Center, you're going to get a new director, probably someone from New York that has been involved with this on a larger scale, that probably has more expertise. Is this true?
That's correct. Actually, I'd like to just say something before giving a few formal remarks representing the LTLC. Yesterday, I was advised to come on down to the City Council, and although some people confuse me with, as a lawyer with my little briefcase and my dark suit, I explained to them I was a doctor, so this is foreign territory for me. I think most of you know I've been up...
Could you state your name, please?
Yeah, Wayne Passanen, Dr.
Okay.
Wayne Passanen, and some of you know I've been an emergency physician at the Lowell General for 30 years and been involved in a lot of other things which I can touch on. But I was thinking, what could I do that would be dramatic, that would be interesting to this group coming down here today? And so I was in my office up at Lowell General, and I just came out and I saw Mr. Tucker, and I think a lot of you know Joe Tucker, who's our acting executive director. And he was with this lovely lady who happens to be sitting beside right at this moment. And this is a true story. I couldn't have scripted this any better. And so I said to Joe, how are you doing? What's going on? He said, well, I'm bringing up here. And he was with his friend Verna. And he introduced Verna to me, who's been a resident of Lowell. And I never met her before. And Joe explained to me that she had been a resident at the shelter for a period of time here in Lowell. And Verna, you might just say a word about where you are right now, if you don't mind? Oh, she's lucky.
She could come up to that podium with the microphone.
Verna, come on up and just tell her what
if she
and
wants to.
this wasn't staged, except by me yesterday when I said, Joe, we got to get Verna down here, because I think this is part of the story. It's not the whole story. And I'm not an anecdotal person, but...
I live at 111 Hildreth Street in Lowell, apartment 410.
Good for you. How long did you live at the Transitional Living Center?
Almost a year.
And how long have you been out of there now?
Almost 5 months.
Yeah. And how are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
How did they treat you there?
I worked with them and helped the kitchen and whatnot, something to do to help the ones that are unfortunate. And I'm glad I did it. And I still would do it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Thank you
If
very
you don't
much.
mind, I have to actually be out of here at 6 o'clock, if that's possible. So if
Yes,
I have a
sir.
chance to give a couple of my thoughts,
Okay.
I'd like to do so. Number one, I've only been on the board for about a year and a quarter. I was asked by a nursing colleague of mine if I'd be willing to serve, and having been an emergency physician for 30 years, and actually also having been the medical director of the detox unit, which is now at Tewksbury Hospital, and since 1987, the methadone program here in Lowell, I've had an opportunity to have a lot of interface with homeless people, more than you would believe. But I didn't really understand the problem. So when I was asked to serve on the board, I agreed. Little did I know that I'd be involved in as many controversies as has been apparent. But I wanted to tell you that just about in October, I was asked by the board to chair the board. And it was clear to me that there were a number of issues. I've said this many times publicly and privately. I don't think the people who are involved with the shelter have to apologize to anybody for the humane effort that has gone on there for many, many years. But like any program and like any welfare program, there's always a bit of controversy. One of the things with welfare, and we're all for it if we're helping people, is the concern if we're enabling people to continue in their state. And so I became aware that we needed to do things better. And I say publicly right from the get-go, there were too many police calls. That's not right to have the shelter using up that many resources. But that's been the past. So what are we doing presently? Well, number one, with the board's consent and the graciousness of a group from church in Concord, Jericho Road, we were able to retain a first-class, national-level social service consultant company. And actually today, they've finished their preliminary report on a strategic plan on where we go, because it's one of the things you have to do in an organization. You have to have a strategic plan, not just a mission that says you're going to help the homeless, but how are you going to do it? How are you going to fund it? And how are you going to monitor that? So we started that. The second thing that came to my realization, this is a very complicated situation, because as we all know, homelessness now is a big issue nationally, in the state, with the commission, and of course here in our community. So it was clear to me that this is a very complicated job, and we need someone with perhaps a certain skill level to be the executive director. And with all due credit to Joe Tucker, who I've come to absolutely, totally admire for his efforts at the shelter for many, many years, and in this community for many years, it was clear to me that we needed to get someone with a higher level of understanding of the issues and the problems. So I'm happy to announce tonight that we have hired and he signed a contract to start March 10th, a gentleman by the name of Peter Duda, who's from New York. He's married with a couple of kids, a daughter in college. He's been lifetime work in social service and actually with the homeless in New York City. He's been involved at many levels in policy. He's also, interestingly enough, actually been the director of a shelter that had over 1,000 inhabitants. So he's had some big-time experience. Thanks to Linda King, he happened to see an ad for this job that we ran when we first initiated the process of trying to find a new executive director, and Peter was interested in it. So he contacted us, we had some initial conversations, and he came up here. And I think we're going to be blessed to have him come to this community and to bring his expertise to help us to run a program that has got to be improved upon. And I don't think there's any question on my mind or the minds of the board that our operations need to be improved. And then we need to look at a lot of issues as it relates to the shelter in this community. Because as most of you should know, there's a movement to get away from the warehousing of people, even on a temporary basis in large facilities like shelters. And the buzzword is the SRO, the single residence occupancy. It's finding people room and finding people space. And I've actually just become a pretty fast learner in all of this. And one of my goals, and I hope the goal of the board, will be to help to facilitate that here in Lowell. We need more Vernas, and we need them more quickly. We have too many people who spend too much time at the shelter, and some of that is because there aren't as many options. I was reading Councilor Kazanjian's remarks about finding a facility in Tewksbury. We'll be happy to transport people to any community that will provide us an improved situation for the clientele that we're taking care of. And I don't say that sarcastically or facetiously or politically. I say that sincerely because I believe that that's going to be the challenge. And I would like to see over the next 5 years the downsizing of the shelter, fewer people there, and dispersing the residents who are presently spending, in some cases, over a year at that facility to put them into more permanent, more regular housing. So I will tell you, the counselors, that I share your concerns about disruptive behavior, about police calls, about a program that isn't being run in a professional fashion. But I also want you to understand the challenge that we have, and it's a national challenge, and it has been made better by most recent economic concerns. We've had running with our 90 beds, almost 100% occupancy every night in the building that we own on 209 Middlesex Street. We've been running anywhere, last night there were 31 people in our protocol, and that's from November 15th to April 15th. We take anyone in off the street who doesn't have a place to stay. And they're staying in a room about this big, and there may be 30 or 40 people actually sleeping on cots. Some of them are intoxicated when they arrive. They are not allowed to consume alcohol, of course, or drugs or anything on the premises. But it has been my feeling, and I faced this in the emergency department, these people are better served to sleep the night in that safe surrounding than to be on the street. And I made some remarks about they're better to be alive on Middlesex Street than dead on Merrimack Street, and kind of one of those press kind of things to catch someone's attention. But there's a certain amount of truth to it. So I'm not going to go on any longer other than to let you folks know that as the chairman of the board, we will absolutely work with you. I've had many meetings with Adam, with Mr. Lynch, with James Erickson, with Chief Lavalley. We've met with the JAM group. We have made some changes immediately. We closed the courtyard because there were some concerns by some of the residents that the people were hanging around. I said, we will do that, and we'll do it in a spirit of cooperation. But remember, we have 400 people a day are being fed in that facility. 400 people a day. So naturally, for 400 people in a day to enter into a building and then to leave the building, they will be around and about the building. We will do everything that is humanly possible to disperse them. But there are also some legal issues and some issues of where do they go. And one of the things we need to do in the shelter is we need to increase our programming so people have something to do and some place to go. But when you're talking about $1.2 million, $1.3 million budget to house 120 people a night and serve $144,000, you can see it's a challenge. And so the Janets of the world who's here, who works our kitchen and is, a saint. Where's Janet? There she is, a saint. They should be given credit. And I think what we need to do is we need to work together in a spirit really of community, because it is a problem. Thanks.
Thank you. You said you serve 400 people a day.
That's the maximum, about 144,000 meals last year.
How do you plan on controlling that on a daily basis?
Well, we have a contract with the Commonwealth. That's how the program is funded. It's funded by the DTA, and actually we're obligated to provide meals to the residents. So if you have 130 people, you're actually obligated to provide up to 260 meals a day. I think we have a problem where it is a little out of hand, where we have more people coming from the area who are using the facility for dining, for eating. And I think some of that is good because we're helping people who otherwise wouldn't be fed. I think some of that is potentially a problem because we may have people who are unnecessarily utilizing the facility. Our strategic plan will look at that. We need to have an answer to how many people are truly in need who are eating there versus those who are coming for a Janet home-cooked meal for convenience.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you're really helping these individuals by keeping them in that environment where you have alcohol and drugs and prostitution?
Never when there's alcohol or drugs, absolutely not. I agree with you.
But it's there 24/7.
There are, unfortunately, I'll tell you how pervasive the drug world is. Here in Lowell, on Monday, I met 5 individuals who were starting on the methadone program. And how pervasive. One of the young men who came in, about 26 years of age, very intelligent, very good looking. And Counselor, I asked him, I said, how much education did you have? And he said he went to college. And I said, where'd you go to college? And he said he went to Brown University. And I was stunned, because I'm a graduate of Brown University, and I have 2 sons who are graduates of Brown University. And so when we talk about drugs and alcohol in our community, yes, they're there. They shouldn't be, and they won't be in the shelter. But the problem is that we have a lot of people who have a lot of problems who do not necessarily have access or inclination for care on any given evening.
Yeah.
Or
It's
at any given
not in the
time.
shelter itself, but it's around the shelter. They can
Oh,
walk
absolutely.
across the street,
No
right
question.
on the sidewalk, and
That
it's
neighbor-
there. And that's why I mentioned Tewksbury State Hospital, and
Yeah.
it's a perfect isolated location for these individuals.
If we could get beds at Tewksbury, I run the detox, and we have a 24-bed unit. I can tell you that we run 100% occupancy, and if you want to get into the detox, because you can't go anyplace if you have no insurance or you have Mass Health, that's Medicaid, we have a waiting list on any given day between 50 and 100 people. 50 to 100 people are waiting to get into a facility that they can go in for 5 days. Thank you to the Commonwealth. We have half as many beds as we did 20 years ago, with a much greater drug problem and many more people with addiction and alcoholism.
Well, still, like I said, you can do some changes and make some changes, but the environment is still there for these individuals.
Well, we'll try to improve that
And
environment.
I know Chief LaValle is going to do his best, but it's still going to be there. And we're spending $500 million in that area, and as it is right now, it would be a waste of time if the shelter was run the same way it is right now.
Well, it's not going to be run the same
I-
way as it
I know
has
you-
been
I
in
know
the
you're
past.
saying it's not.
I'm going to guarantee you that.
I want to help these individuals, I really do. But leaving them there and the way the environment is right now, I don't think we're really helping them.
Well,
And that's why I mentioned that we find a nice isolated location and put them in this facility.
well, I disagree with you, and I will defend that we are helping them, and it's not always easy. And social service, human service isn't, well, I know you're in the car business, it isn't fixing a car.
You are helping them somewhat, but on the majority, you're not. You just
Well,
mentioned they have problems, and
you
there's drug problems on the street.
You know,
and alcohol
I faced the same approach when we instituted the methadone program in 1987 here in Lowell, and it was interesting. The editorial in Lowell Sun say no to methadone is going to bring in crime and so forth. When people, and I think Ken knows this, if people are not in a methadone program, for instance, they commit 230 days of crime on average per year. That's days of crime that's selling drugs, stealing, or prostitution. And the well-documented studies that it's less than 10 days of crime for those same individuals when they go to a methadone program. So when you have people in the shelter, one of the things that you can at least be safe with at night when you have 130 people tucked away is they're not going to be roaming the streets. Sure, we'd all love them to have jobs. We'd all love them to have homes in the suburbs. We'd all love them to have a different life. And it's such a challenge. I mean, I'm mystified every day as to how people can live like they live. But, we do our best, and that's, in some ways, the way the world is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Passanen, thank you for coming this evening and giving us an update. Appreciate your offer and willingness to work with the city, and look forward to working with you from the city side. I made some points earlier for a reason in terms of, we can't shut down the homes, the shelter. There's nothing we can do. They're here. And I think the key then is that we need to coexist. And the professional steps that you've taken with the shelter, the strategic planning, and hopefully the turnaround here is encouraging. I had a motion on last night. I think that we have, a number of issues down in that area. That the shelter is a symptom, or is the one of the sores as a result of all of those problems. I also understand that we're a city and we have these issues. And as my mother used to say, but for the grace of God, I'm not there and no one in my family is there. But it is a necessary service that a city has to provide. That's why it's here. And the key is to coexist and to be run properly. And I'm confident or hoping that that's what we're moving towards, and it sounds like you're headed in the right direction. There's a huge investment in the city side, as you're aware. Everybody here is aware. And if there's anything we can do to assist, whether it's enforcement, patrols, and things of that nature, because there is a big problem outside of the four walls of the shelter that needs to be addressed, on the city side as well. If they're not getting the drugs in the shelter, they're getting them somewhere around there. And I think cooperation and communication, particularly with the police, DPD, and the manager, in a coordinated effort, we can help that whole area. And I think that if we use a cooperative approach, it'll be much easier or more effective. I don't think it's going to be easy no matter what we do, but more effective. I think that it's imperative that we get a handle on that whole area, and at the same time provide these services because people need it. And whether we like it or not, it's going to continue. People are going to continue to need these services. I like your thoughts in terms of the movement towards SROs. I'd like to hear more about it in terms of where they'd be and how how it all works and in time frame. And maybe if you could come in and give periodic updates or go through the manager for us as to how things are going down there and what your plans are and your timetable with your strategic plan in terms of how you're going to implement. We know what your mission is, but how you intend to get there, I think, is the key. Once again, I appreciate you coming in, and I look forward to working as a team with the shelter to help improve that whole area. I know there's things we can try and do on the city side to make that a little bit easier or more effective on your side as well. Again, it's a necessary service. You know it. We all know it. It's a matter of how can we make it work. They're in every major city in the country, and they're next to billion-dollar skyscrapers in other cities, and they coexist. They're not vacant because of a shelter around it. So hopefully the new director coming in will have some ideas, and maybe he's lived through one of these similar situations, and we can this is the turnaround point, and make the whole area a little bit more coexist a little better.
Just to share a statistic in preparing for a talk I gave a couple of months ago, they estimate about 3.5 million people are homeless at any given year in the United States, about 800,000 in a week. We don't know how many people are actually homeless here in Lowell on any given night. We know how many people are at the shelter, but we don't know how many people are, this whole term, couch surfing, staying at a friend's or leaning on someone when they're in crisis. So it is a rather huge and interesting problem. One of the things that I've learned, and I didn't really appreciate this, if you are found to be disabled by our own federal government, and you get something called supplemental security income, that's SSI. That's not related to Social Security, by the way. But that's federal disability for those who have nothing, run out of unemployment and can't work or don't work. You can get about, as a single individual, about $680 a month to do that. And if you look in Lowell and you look at some of the rooming houses, the minimum rent is going to be $100 a week. So you've got people who, are trying to exist on literally $682 a month, and the rent in the private sector. Now, if you get Section 8 and you're lucky enough to get on the list and wait 5 or 7 years, you can get a nice 2-bedroom apartment over the towers, and heat included for $125. You can make it. But these are huge social issues that, by the way, we haven't heard too much about in the campaign. There are two things that I haven't heard in this presidential campaign. Number one is anything about anyone's attitude or philosophy about the problems of drugs in the United States, and two, the whole homelessness, housing issue, apart from foreclosure on mortgages.
Okay, we understand that, and you probably missed my point. I don't want to try to eliminate the people from going to the shelter. I just want to relocate it, get it out of their environment, and put it in a safe environment. That's all. And I think we can help the people out by doing that. Chief, do we have any plan as far as cleaning up the Middlesex Street and Appleton Street, dealing with the problems that we have over there?
Well, Counselor, we have instituted park and walks in the neighborhood. That means the officers assigned there will park their cruiser and patrol on foot for a period of time. I've also met with Mr. Backey, Chuck Carney, and we've gone over to the new garage location. We're considering a substation at that location, at least temporarily, until a retail space is located there to add extra police presence in the neighborhood. I also know that we're monitoring with a route officer when possible that particular neighborhood as well, someone on foot. But again, we do have limited resources.
Yeah.
We have fewer police officers than we should in the Lowell Police Department. And we're constantly strategizing and prioritizing. And of course, we've just went through this recent rash of issues that we've had to deal with. So we've been concentrating on that, but we are doing the best we can in the shelter area. We've also come into some overtime grant money from the federal government under the auspices of a hotspots grant. We're able to utilize some of those funds to maybe establish a walking route in the neighborhood of the shelter periodically when we find that there are potential, times of the day when problems are occurring there. And that particularly concerns is the issue when there is meals being served. That's when we have the largest group of people. The closing of the courtyard had an impact as well in terms of some of the people being relocated out of the courtyard onto the street. So you may see more people now out on the street in front of the shelter than you had in the past because they were utilizing the courtyard at that time. I did notice yesterday that some people were not in front of the shelter, but several down the street. I'm not sure if they had been asked to move along but just relocated farther down Middlesex Street. That's a possibility. But we are doing the best we can with the resources we have and keeping an eye on things. The calls are obviously quite considerable, and hopefully we can continue to work together to deal with that issue and eliminate some of these calls for service by eliminating some of the problems at that location. I will say that we have certainly experienced an increase potentially over the colder weather months because of the fact that maybe some people have been allowed to go to the shelter who we certainly wouldn't want to see out in the cold, who may have been having a few cocktails before they arrive. We don't want to see them out there freezing to death. So I know the rules have been somewhat less stringent when it's really cold out. We certainly want to see people in a safe environment, not out in the street in sub-zero temperatures.
Okay. I just want to recognize Councilor Lindsay is here, and Councilor Elliott, and also Mayor Caulfield came, also he's here. Councilor Elliott, you want to say something?
I just had a couple of questions, Doctor. I know you have to leave soon, and I appreciate you coming here. And I think this is helpful. I think we all know that, as a large city, I mean, we're going to have our societal ills, and there's going to be people that need that service. I guess one point that hasn't been brought up, I think, in this whole discussion and is a concern because of the activity is there's also an elementary school in very close proximity of that shelter. And, of course, whatever activity was in the courtyard, it's a concern to parents that I have heard from. And I think it's good that we do provide it. And I think we are compassionate. And if we're coming off as if, we're not, I don't think that's the case, but it's a problem that has come to the surface, and it's pretty significant. And we can see that you're making some steps, but irregardless of whether we're making an investment in that area, the institution or the operation has to run the way that it was permitted. I understand that we want to serve, we don't want anybody to go hungry, but there's also a capacity that, we expect restaurants or any other entity in the city to abide by whatever the permitting rules are, and I don't think it should be any different for the shelter. That being said, March, this the new executive director is coming in March. That's a month from now. Are there plans to do anything between now and then to continue on whatever the report from Jericho Road has provided? I mean, are we waiting till March and, he's going to come here and he's going to get his feet wet and that's going to be another, few weeks? And, when can we anticipate, in addition to closing the courtyard, some more noticeable progress on, operating the site? I mean, it's, we're trying to move forward. We're going to open up a garage very soon, and we're trying to stimulate some activity down there, and we want to clean up, the problems as well. So, between now and March 10th, can we anticipate, what can we anticipate? What can we'll look for? I will say, Chief, I appreciate, I go, Middlesex, dropping my little one off to basketball on Thursdays, and I go by, and I have to say, both times I've gone by in the last couple of weeks, there's been enforcement and there's been arrests, actually, both times I've gone by. So, I think whatever activity that was taking place is being addressed by the police, and it's a good sign. Not that arresting everyone is the answer, but clearly we all know that there have been some issues there. So I know you have to go. I don't know if that's a
I don't know
question.
that I'm can make a promise. I'll tell you that we're certainly aware, and I did not mean to imply, by the way. It's one of the reasons I don't like liberals is they always imply that they care more than other people, and I'm actually more of a conservative, and I didn't feel that at all, that you had any less compassion than anyone else. I think you might have a different view of how we approach it. I think we'll take this, and there'll be a lot of discussion at the next board meeting. We have our strategic plan just arrived today. That includes things like downsizing, reducing the number of meals. I'm not going to say we're going to do that tomorrow, because I think we have to look at what the alternatives are. Certainly that would be one way to reduce some of the traffic in the area, would be to cut back on the food service we're providing. And I think that's a significant possibility. To do that, I think we'll need some other agencies to kind of step up to the plate and help to provide some of that. So I think it's hard for me to give you a specific answer. I think this has been a pretty rough winter. So I think one of the reasons that we have had a lot of demand on the facility is there haven't been that many options from merely a weather point of view. But it is an interesting issue about why does homelessness, why is it increasing in terms of, and this is true in the city of Boston where they're having major problems. I mean, they have Pine Street Inn that has 500 people. I just referred to a shelter in New York that houses over 1,000 people in a night. So these are extraordinary things, and we'll do our best, and we'll certainly want to keep the area clean out in front. The cigarette butts is disgusting. We're going to put a group to get that done on a daily basis. I think some of the trash in the area needs to be cleaned up, just the physical appearance. We could do that immediately, and I'll tell Joe that that'll be a priority. But I don't think I can make any promises by March 10th tonight that would be honest and that we would be able to implement.
Well, I think as long as we all see progress, that, that's, I don't think this is going to change overnight. Can you tell me how many residents of the shelter on a daily basis are from Lowell? Are they required to have a home address? Do we know where they came from? Do we know?
Well, sort of by definition, if you're homeless, your address for that particular point is the Transitional Living Center.
Right.
The vast majority, 90% are from the greater Lowell area. One of the issues as far as Lowell residents only is our contract, and the primary funding source is, of course, DTA, and we are restricted from somehow limiting people's access. I think that it's like the methadone program. The majority of people are from the area, and I spent a fair bit of time down there, and I'm telling you, there's no way you would necessarily want to come from Laconia, New Hampshire to winter at the Transitional Living Center in Lowell. So I think they're pretty much all local people, Merrimack Valley people.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, just real briefly, again, I want to thank you for coming in, and I'm not sure how much communication that your center has with the police department. Maybe Some of these calls can be avoided by just simply a heads up that it's getting crowded. We're going to be letting out from lunch or dinner, whatever it is. The times, the peak times, I guess, maybe having an officer present to just move along will serve the purpose of avoiding an incident or a call. Might be easier. And I think it's a matter of communication and cooperation, and this certainly can work. It works in other areas. I really think that this can work if it's done properly. And I know you have a strategic plan. You have a new director coming on in roughly a month. And what I was going to ask is if you could potentially come back and at some other time, the manager someone can contact you in terms of when you're ready to maybe come in and present what you have going on, introduce a new director, and maybe give us another update as to what you're looking to do and how, quite frankly, we can help, and what problems that we might be able to assist you with, because we all have to work together here, or else this is not going to be as successful ever. So again, I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely.
And if we could do that in the future, that'd be great.
I think Council Lenzi has a few questions.
Doctor, I don't want to keep you past 6, even though it's 6:02. But when someone comes in and they've been drinking, the people who are already there, are they mixed in with the people who are there all the time, or are they segregated at the door or anything like that?
They're segregated. Maybe Joe Tucker could speak to exactly how it works, but we own the building at 209, and that's actually the modern building that was developed by the shelter with some grant money, and actually on the exterior it's quite a pleasant building. On the inside, there are too many people too close together, and I had to think the other day, my wife complains about my snoring, and I was in a room where there were about 40 men on bunk beds, so there's a lot of congestion inside. But to get into our permanent building where the 90 beds are and the 12 apartments, you cannot be positive for either alcohol or drugs, and there is random testing that goes on at the point of entry. So if somebody would smell of alcohol, they would not be able to stay in the permanent section of the shelter that evening. And the same thing would be if there's the appearance of drugs, or we have the ability to test for drugs with a urine sample right there on the spot. As far as the people that are coming into 189, and that's the space that we are presently paying rent to Mr. Lechulis for. We have a policy that in the summer, between April 15th and November 15th, we don't have anyone staying in that facility during those months, the summer months. But we do have a policy in November 15th to April 15th that if you are homeless and you seek staying overnight at that shelter, that you will be allowed in. You could be intoxicated. You cannot be abusive. You can't be disruptive, and you can't be grossly impaired. But if you had alcohol in your breath and you came in, and you could spend the night, and then you would leave in the morning. But that's the winter protocol, November 15th to April 15th, and that's really was a humanitarian gesture. And I think we could look at that. I think that's one of the things that the board needs to perhaps reconsider, and that might be something else that we could take more action on more quickly.
Okay, yes, Karen.
To address that, what you just
Wait,
said, Dr. Passanen. Oh, thank you.
Karen, just state your name and address, Karen, please.
Karen Bell. I'm the owner of the club Fitness, Health, and Spa on Middlesex Street, and am also the founder of JAMBRA, Jackson Appleton Middlesex Business and Residents Association. Although the people do not, the two separate populations, those who are dry and those who are active, do not sleep together. They do, however, use the same facilities for all of their other programs, if I'm not wrong. So they do mix while they eat, and they do mix while they're waiting for other programs and so on. So that somebody like Verna, who has done very well, was forced, I'm sure, in this time to be sitting next to somebody who was not somebody that Verna might want to sit next to in her efforts to take herself out of homelessness. And I think that's a definite problem, something that either has to be addressed, and I think it has to be addressed by the Transitional Living Center itself. It's not really a problem that the community can dictate, but I think that there are certainly ways, as have been shown by other shelters, and I hope that that will happen. Can I continue a little bit? Okay. I have been working with various shelter commissions in the city of Lowell since 1993. Okay, it's 2008. In 1998, the commission that I was on at that time, which was formed by Brian Martin, then city manager, determined that this shelter, and along with Joe Tucker was on that same committee, and several of the other people within the community who deal in helping people. And I think I was probably one of the only business people on that committee. It was determined that that shelter, or that Lowell Transitional Living Center, as it was later called, would be a dry facility. And it was never our understanding, certainly as I sat there on that commission, or even Brian Martin himself, that it would be only dry for basically 7 months. And I at the time had said that I felt that Lowell should have a place to be able to give a bed to somebody who is actively involved in alcohol or drugs, but that place not be put anywhere where there are residences, okay? And I look at the Cambridge Center, for instance, which is in an industrial park, and the industrial park has no one around at night, so at night the shelter is used to house, and following the morning, those people are transported out of that area into various programs, et cetera. So there are ways to work things. I thank Rita for calling me compassionate. I don't think I have a compassionate bone in my body. I really don't. A lot of people here will agree to that. I am a business owner, and as a business owner, I am held accountable for my actions and the actions of my business, and even the actions of my clients of my business. And we look at things such as bars. Bar at night might have clients who are inebriated and they've been served in the bar. Well, that bar is required to have security, some kind of security. And I think those bars have now been required to clean their streets, to keep their noise down, to keep people, when they leave that business, to act in a decent manner. And they are required to have the security on their own dime, basically, not calling the city's dime to task, to be able to handle their clients. And I really think that the Lowell Transitional Living Center has to become a much better neighbor. I'm glad that they are participating. We are doing a shelter task force once again, and James Erickson has been heading that, and we've had a lot of participation from other business owners in the Jamber area, and a lot of residents as well. And they all might be very compassionate, by the way. I'm not going to paint them with my same brush. But the reason, and I'm saying this very sincerely, the reason I have worked, and I've worked hours and hours and hours on this problem, is, number one, I do like giving a helping hand to someone like Verna, okay? I think it's very necessary. I was in a position myself very much like Verna, and many, many years ago. I do appreciate the fact that there are people who need help, and I enjoy giving a helping hand when I can and doing anything possible.
That's called compassion.
But it's also good business sense. I have done these things because I love Lowell. I love Lowell, and I don't like Lowell being held hostage to a small group of people who can't behave themselves. And I think that we have to find a way to keep the people on our streets behaving themselves and not destroying our property values or anything else, or our ability to run business. Because without my business, guess what? You don't get the taxes. And you can't help the people. So there has to be a symbiosis in our attempts here, that we understand If Lowell is going to be a good city, it's going to have they be made up of good neighbors.
Okay, Chief, do they have a police officer that they pay for, or is it just on the city's dime, the shelter?
There is no police detail assigned to the shelter. There
Is
once
it-
was. I
Yeah.
believe the funding expired, and they no longer have the grant money available to hire a police
Is
officer
there
on a
something we
detail.
can try to work something out with the doctor and try to get police
That would,
details?
that would be entirely up to them, Counselor. You know, we can't force that point. They would have to decide to hire an officer with, if they had money available. I'm sure they spend their funds on for other
Doctor, have you got 1 second?
purposes.
Well, just one question. Police details, would you be willing to supply your own police details there?
I think the answer would be no, because I don't think we have any possibility from a budgetary point of view. We certainly met with Ken and actually looked at having a police officer located in a space at the shelter, and the problem was for both of us was prohibitive cost. So I think, you know, like a lot of things in life and in government, is can you get some money to provide it? We certainly, we're running at a deficit right now in our budget, and so I couldn't promise that we could provide. I mean, our staff will do what they can, but you know, when they're inside, it's not necessary. It's not possible for someone to be registering a client coming in to spend the night and also be on the street monitoring exactly what all of the behavior is. But I do hear the concerns of the council, and we're going to sit down and we'll do our
Okay, all right, thank you.
We looked at a space that the shelter had available for potentially a substation, but it would really not adequately meet our, you know, our facility needs. We found it to be just way too small. It could be a drop-in center for an officer to, you know, write a report periodically, but what we're contemplating at the new parking garage is a much better location for us.
Well, it kind of bothers me where the shelter's causing the issue and the problems over here. And I know they're trying to do their best with their staff, but the city is shorthanded with police officers, and we have to take them away from certain areas and supply them to the shelter. And if the shelter can't supply us with their own police officer, you know, with their own money, I think it's tough for us, so.
I'm sorry, can I say a couple words?
Yes, you can. Yeah, just state your name and address, and it's got to be quick because we have a.
Very quick.
Okay,
I'm
thank
not
you.
Dr. Passanen. Marcia Cassidy, 195 Topman Street in Lowell. I'm very proud to say I'm a member of the board of the Lowell Transitional Living Center. I'm here with several of my fellow board members who, like myself, give of our time, our money, and our compassion to help those who are desperately in need of help. I'm hearing a lot of things here tonight, and you know, it's always very positive when you're hearing people talk about progress and solving problems. What I have not heard at all tonight, and quite frankly, what I don't hear at all, and what it just stuns me, is I constantly hear the references to the shelter's problem, and that you have this problem. The shelter does not have a problem, the city does. This is the city's homelessness problem. Homelessness is your problem, with all due respect. And the shelter, if I might continue, is simply meant to be one of the solutions. The shelter is not the problem. Homelessness is the problem, and we as a city need to embrace that and address that. The city has the homelessness problem. The shelter is just one of the solutions. And it may not be the perfect solution. It's certainly not a panacea. But it is meant to be one of the solutions. And it is not fair to point to the shelter and say, you've got this problem. Because you could shut down the shelter. Actually, it's not like the group homes. You could shut it down. We could close it down tonight, and it could just cease to exist. But you will still have the homelessness problem. We can move the people out to Tewksbury. There will still be homeless people in Lowell. We can turn away those who are addicted, and that is a medical condition. If they are addicted, if they are dealing with the mental health issues that are not being addressed by, shame on us, our city and our state, they will continue to be on your streets. And it may not be Middlesex Street. It may be another street. We can turn them away, but you as a city will still be dealing with homelessness.
Okay, and we understand that, and we really want to help you out, and like I said earlier...
I'm sorry, we really want to what?
We want to help you out as much as we can.
No, the issue, sir, is that we are trying to help you out.
We're helping each other out. We're helping each other out.
I'm sorry?
We're helping each other out.
Let's do that. Let's stop the finger pointing. Let's stop the you shelter. It's your problem. What are you
the bottom
going
line
to
is
do?
we have a bad environment over there, and I'm trying to make a motion here to move the shelter out of that bad environment. And realistically, you're not helping the individuals by leaving them there.
I disagree. And as
I
would the
don't.
people
I
who are
mean,
there.
I've been around the area quite a bit. I've been there and working with the police officers, Kenny knows, towing the cars, and I see what's going on, talking to police officers and over a number of years, and I know the issues and the problems we have over there. Drugs,
I'm sorry.
alcohol,
Once again, it's
prostitution.
the issues and the problems that you have over there. It is, the shelter is
And
simply...
that's why I'm trying to correct it, to get them away from that environment and put them in a nice environment to help them out.
And if that works, then that's great.
Well, that's
We're
what I'm trying to do.
certainly
So-
doing it. But I would strongly encourage you, as a city official, and all of us, to stop pointing fingers, to stop blaming the shelter, to stop...
I'm not blaming the shelter.
Yes, you are, sir,
I'm
with
not.
all due respect.
We-
You've
we
made
have
several
a,
references.
We have a job to do for the taxpayers of Lowell. They're going to be spending $500 million in that area. And the way that shelter is being
Spend some of
operated
that
right
money
now-
on the shelter then. If you want a police officer there, sir, you as a city official can fund that. We have no money. We are funded, we are scraping, we're doing, Vegas nights. We're desperately seeking every dollar we can to help keep these people from dying or from going out in the street and committing crimes. If you truly want to help, you've got the checkbook. We don't.
Oh, we don't have the checkbook. Yeah, I wish we did. If we'd
Again.
hired more police officers, that was the case. But we don't have that money to do it.
Then it's very unfair to point to us and say, then why don't you do it? We have a
Well,
lot less money than
My whole
you do.
point is to move them away from the area and put them in a nice area.
Okay.
That's why we're here tonight. I'm not here to argue with you. I just want to get them out of that environment and put them in a nice environment.
And again, if that's the solution and everyone agrees to that, then I'm sure the board will willingly work with that. But I just strongly encourage you and ask you to stop pointing the finger and blaming the shelter for the city's homelessness problem. It is your problem. We are trying to be one of the solutions. Thank you.
And another thing, and Council Mercy mentioned last night, and I've talked to Chief LaValle, we're getting a lot of out-of-town individuals being dropped off here in the city, and we have to handle the people in the surrounding towns, which they don't want to deal with their own problems, and drop them off in our city, and we have to deal with them. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, I certainly think that, as we talked about earlier, there's a protocol, so to speak, that when people have issues in the environment they're in, they move them to a different community to try to get them away from where they had the previous problem. So I think what's happening is the manager said earlier, you may have people who are from Lowell who are moved to a halfway house in Medford. You might have someone from Medford move from a halfway house there into Lowell to stay in Lowell. So we have that constant rotation, so to speak, of people coming from other communities, and we're sending people from our community potentially to other ones as well. But certainly, it's difficult task. It's not. There's no easy answers. It's hard to, resolve this issue completely. But oftentimes, the police department finds itself in the middle of a situation that's difficult, and we're doing the best we can, as I said, with the resources we have available to monitor the location. And it has been, it's not, the neighborhood itself, there are other factors there. There's a liquor establishment or a package store nearby. There's a check cashing operation on Appleton Street for people who have don't have a bank account or a checking account, so they cash their checks there. They do the day labor. There are other locations in that neighborhood that are problematic for us. So we do have, people who come and live in Lowell from other communities and stay at some of these halfway houses or shelters, and some obviously are from the city as well who stay there. So it's a combination.
Thank you, Chief. Bill, would you like to speak?
I sure would. I've sat here tonight and I've listened to a bunch of platitudes. I've listened to people trying to make each other feel good. I ask you tonight, with the exception of these two people here, which one of you has ever stopped and got out of your car and gone in to see what's going on? Not one.
Wrong. Wrong.
Rita
Bill.
Mercia was there when we christened the new building, for instance. I asked you, Alan, about it. You says, I've been out of my car. I said, no, you haven't. You've been out of your car on Middlesex Street, but not to see those people. The manager was there a week ago last Wednesday. He got an earful. He spoke to a homeless person. And the homeless person said, I'm warm and I have my television. A chuckle. How do you have a television when you're homeless? No place to plug in. I got batteries. How does he get the batteries? He gets welfare. The chief was there. Livid, I understand, that they had been thrown out of the courtyard. Why are they thrown out of the courtyard? Because the building that faces on Jackson Street has condos. There's somebody up in the condo who has a pregnant wife. Complains, my wife is getting ill because your people are down there in the yard, 3 floors down, smoking cigarettes. So they got stopped smoking cigarettes. This complaint came up again. Out of the yard! Where are they gonna go? I'll tell you where they are. Come on down to Scott's Corner on Merrimack Street in Central. Come on, let's take a look at them. How many of them are there? My wife and I run the National Park site over in front of Cobblestones, the gatehouse. How many of them do you think we see walking the streets every day all summer? The problem here is not the shelter. The problem is you people who are not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And it stands that way at all times. Feeding? I ask you, which one do you want me to say can't eat? My wife and I were there Monday noon. We fed 135 people. They had the best meal they could get in the city of Lowell. You can't get a bowl of soup in any restaurant in Lowell as good as they got. You can't get one. What's the problem? They're out in the street. This council has passed ordinances and rules. No loitering. Chief, isn't doing his job? He's doing his job. Those officers pick somebody up and arrest them, and it goes to the courthouse, and what happens? Get away. You're a bad little boy. Don't come back again. Our police are doing their job, but they're being hamstrung. These people in the shelter, they're being spit on. You know, as a historian of the city of Lowell, Lowell is the origin of Nina. No Irish need apply. We're going to be the origin again of something. NIMBY. Not in my backyard. Put them out in Tewksbury. Put them out in the hospital. Let me put it this way. You can't throw them out. You can't stop human nature. You're supposed to be helping these people. Instead of sitting there and saying, I know, I just want to get rid of them. I just want to get rid of them. I don't want them in my backyard. I live in Wiganville. I don't want them out there. But I'm not going to turn around and kick them off the street. I'm going to take care of them. For 6 long years, my wife and I have been down there 2 days a week to feed these people. We get to know them. Verna, I remember when she came in. I remember how that lady was almost dead, having a hell of a time to struggle to stay alive. She came in, she helped in the kitchen, and she worked. Look at her now. There's others there that are the same way. Sure, there are people that come in there. You see a guy come in, he walks up, staggers up to get his food. The answer is, here we go again. Sure, but for the largest amount of them, 90% at least that comes through there, they're clean. They're not getting their drugs there. They're certainly not getting their booze there. And, as I told you, Alan, up the street there's a garage, a service center. Guess where they eat their lunch? If I could get food for free and I was in a low-paying job, what would I do? Do the same thing. You would too. Can't tell me you wouldn't. Which one of you have ever been hungry? I mean hungry. Gone 24 hours without having any food? None of you. None of you. Unfortunately, at one time in my life, I did. I had a wife and 2 children at one time, 3 children in fact. $5 bill. I had a $5 bill that I had to feed a family for a week. I had to go to welfare. Thank God we had veterans benefits in this city at the time. I was a veteran. They took care of me. Thank you. And that's what I'm saying. And I'm asking you people to do the same thing. Don't drive by. Come on in. Tomorrow's Thursday noontime. You're an attorney. You're a smart man. Tell me what time you'll meet me there. I'll be there at noontime. Come on, I'll introduce you to the people. I challenge you. Don't be taken up in my challenge.
Bill, I just wanted to interrupt you. I have stopped by and I have talked to the people. I haven't been inside the building, but I have stopped by and I have talked to the individuals.
When, Alan, this last week since you and I talked on the telephone?
And I told you that. I told you I have stopped by. You asked me that question and I told you I've been in the area and I did stop by. And I have stopped by numerous areas in Middlesex Street over the course of the years. I'm not just a stranger over there.
Well,
I'm not just a stranger here.
Let's put it this way. The good mayor of this city of Lowell, during the last council, proclaimed that no one is above the law. Yet he has driven by people with an open container. There's an open container law. This man can't take care of them all. Why? Pick them up, take them down there. Dismissed, you're a bad boy. This is a never-ending job for our police, but we got to start from the bottom and work our way up, not start from the top and burrow down.
Well, you just mentioned the open container law. If you see that happening, call the police and the police will come down and make the arrest.
Wait a minute. Alan, cruiser goes by. There's a guy standing with a brown bag he's drinking out of. You telling me that officer can't see it? That officer knows that if you arrest that man, he's going to be back in the street before he gets the car back out of the station. Last night, council meeting, Councilor Mercia said she witnessed a Billerica cruiser drop somebody off. Let me tell you, several occasions I have seen cruisers drop people off. Let's get together. Let's talk to the people that are there. Talk to them. Ask them why. Don't let them gather on the sidewalk. I don't want them there. This is my city. I've been here for over 3/4 of a century, longer than you've all been alive. I've had it.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? It's going to be real quick because we have we have to get into the group homes and,
I just want to say a couple of words. My name is Janet Bossorian. My mother is the food service director and saint of the Lowell Transitional Living Center. I think something that is really getting aside, I appreciated what you said about this being the city's problem. Homelessness is the city's problem. And I think that you guys have made some pretty good points, but your points are this, is that what you feel is there's been an exuberant amount of police activity and calls to the shelter. I would ask you to form a subcommittee to find out how many calls you've had to every barroom in the city of Lowell, to the Bishop Markham Housing Project, to any other problematic area in the city of Lowell, and do the same kind of survey. If you're going to hold the management and the administration of the Lowell Transitional Living Center accountable to all the bad behaviors, you like to put it, I would hope that every single other agency or any other business within this city is held to the same exact accountability, that you're not going to discriminate on any other level and hold the shelter to a different set of ideals and rules that you're going to hold everybody else to. So accountability, I think, is key. I think another very important point is that you're saying that the shelter should be held to the same rules as the bars are. They should have a police detail. They should have, you know, people that are there to monitor certain things. What you're not taking into consideration is that the bars and the restaurants are revenue-generating undertakings. The shelter doesn't make any money. They don't charge for meals. They're not, it's very different. So to say that it's the same thing, it's not. I've worked in many a bar in the city of Lowell. In 2 days, we've turned a $25,000 profit. We can afford to have an officer at our front door. The shelter can't. Okay. So I think it's really important to look at the services that the shelter provides. It's not a wet shelter, it's a dry shelter. But during winter protocol, no, they are not going to let somebody who's been drinking freeze to death out in the street. That's compassionate. Okay. That's what a compassionate person does.
I have to cut you short. We have a school committee meeting coming up.
Okay, sir, well, I just want you to understand that you should really, as a city, look into it and understand homeless people are people as well.
That's real quick. And
my name is Penny Hamurgas, and I've been listening to this all night long now, and I just heard what you said. Now, one thing I don't understand, the shelter, is it not a non-profit organization?
Yes, it's not for profit.
All right, so someone there is making money, correct?
No, it's non-profit.
Non-profit organization. Is this thing on?
Yes.
Okay, the way I know it is non-profit organizations do take donations. Okay, their board of trustees, I'm sure, all get paid well, and they do not pay taxes.
The board is a volunteer board. No one takes a paycheck.
Okay, so the entire board's volunteer. All right. But a nonprofit is an organization that does not pay any taxes. A business owner, on the other hand, and I happen to own a bar, and back to what you said, and I'll give you the name of the bar if you want. I've owned it 7 years. We called the police, I would say between 3 and 4 times in 7 years, which means I pay extra personnel and we keep our problems.
And you're also generating revenue.
But I'm also paying taxes. So all these donations that go to the shelter.
What donations? I mean, do you have a list that we don't know about of donations?
No, I actually haven't seen your list, but I have been involved in other nonprofit organizations.
That money is allocated.
This is out of control.
All right, Penny, we're going to have to stop it. Thank you. Councilor Product.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know our time is running short, and we wanted to get to the next topic, which is the group homes. I don't know if now, I was thinking it might be an appropriate time to make in terms of a segue, to make a motion to continue this portion. And it's, Dr. Passon has been gracious enough to indicate he'd be willing to come back with an update and continue to work with the city, which I think is an important step. We need to cooperate and communicate, and it's going to take everybody's effort to continue to improve that area. So I could make that in the form of a motion to continue and to a further date.
Yes, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And
I just want to call up Pawtuckaville, Dick Carvel. Do you want to speak on this, on the group home grip? Is that just real quick? We have I'm sorry it took so long on the shelter. Kevin, do you want to say something?
Excuse me, Mr. Carvel. Just before we start, through the chair to Attorney Fenton, I don't know if you have a copy of the notice. Is it appropriate for us to be addressing a particular entity? Is it proper notice? Has there been proper publication? It's one thing to talk about group homes, but I think if we're going to
single one out,
identify one particular, we have to be careful in terms of we need 48 hours, and Do we have to, what do we have to give them for notice? I just don't want to see anybody get in a...
Because they have the right to be notified and be here if we're going to single out one entity of
Right.
group
Well,
homes.
it's my understanding that we were going to address the GRIP program next Tuesday. I actually have the people from that program who are going to be here from the Justice Resource Institute. That was my understanding for the Public Safety Subcommittee. Is that correct?
Okay, what time is that, Chief?
5:30 Tuesday,
5:30?
before the city council meeting?
Oh.
That was my understanding.
Okay.
I thought so
Maybe
too.
Okay.
Continue it, to make a motion to continue.
All right, is that, okay. I apologize for the neighborhood groups that were here on the group homes. The shelter took as long as it did.
Next week's meeting is purely on the GRIP. There's, so, I mean, if you wanted to have a general discussion on group homes, I guess that...
Is GRIP been notified?
Yes, we have gentlemen from the overseer of the program is the Justice Resource Institute in Boston. They do plan on being here next Tuesday.
And if, Mr. Chair, if I could just summarize some thoughts here. We're all here, we all came out of our homes or wherever we came from to be here to address the particular subject of transitional care unit as well as homelessness. This is not an effort in futility. We are accomplishing something. We are trying to get on the same page to make everybody kind of live together, because we could be there ourselves. And so I'm saying that this was not a waste of time. Discussion is always healthy. This is a good night. This is good to all come together and air our differences and try to speak. And yes, it was the most heated subcommittee I've ever attended, but that's a good thing, because I firmly believe it is our problem. It's a city's problem. And I think that you're misunderstanding when Councilor Kazanjian, and I shouldn't be speaking for him, says, I think it belongs in a better place. I don't think he's saying, let's hide these people. I think he's trying to say, let's not put it near a package store. Let's not put it near a school. Let's not put it in an area that's being revitalized, because it's just because you'll focus right on these people that are all over the place. And when you close a courtyard and they don't have that entity to go to, where are they going to go? In front of the place? Yes, we have a loitering law that they have to keep on moving. There's no law against panhandling either. I think they can solicit funds, for God's sake. So we're trying through the law to tighten things up, to make it a better environment, a better neighborhood for everybody. And I don't want to misguide anybody and say we don't like these people or we're labeling these people. That is wrong. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get on the same page, and this discussion was very, very healthy. And we'll be here again and again to try to figure out how can we make this a better city and a better neighborhood. I really think that the transitional center is doing the best they can. I don't think they're doing enough for one reason. I think we need a detoxification facility to try to detoxify the alcoholic and the drug addict. We need counseling. We need to try to get to these people and say, you're ruining your life. I think that's what we need. I don't think you can complete this process with the shelter. They can only do so much. I think we're missing a key element. I think many years ago I wanted to see, I know the manager will probably die when he hears it, I wanted to see the Cross Point Towers be a detoxification facility and get those problem people off the street and back into this place and come out productive human beings, because I know many, many, many of them when they were small and they were good and they were clean and they were healthy, and because of the drugs, they're people you don't even want to know, but they have parents that are crying each and every day. I have the compassion, and we just don't have that key element, which is a building to make these people well again and productive again, and they don't have it in the shelter. I'm sorry, they're doing the best they can, we know that, but that's my opinion anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I couldn't say it any better. And we are trying to help the people, and we do have the compassion. I had a family member that passed away from drugs, and I know what it's all about. And I know the environment is there, and we're just trying to move them away from that environment and put them in a safe location, a safe area, so they don't have the issues and problems. We want to help them out. We're not here to hurt you. We're not here to hurt them, but like I said, the environment is not the best for them. We need a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.